The Middle East is once again standing on the edge of a dangerous turning point. A major political shock has just shaken Iran and could reshape the balance of power across the entire region. In the middle of an escalating war, in the aftermath of devastating airstrikes, and at a moment when tensions between Iran, Israel, the United States have reached extreme levels, Iran has made a dramatic and controversial decision. The country has officially named Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as the new Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic. The announcement came only days after the killing of Ali Khamenei in a joint United States and Israeli strike on Tehran. Now, as Iran faces the most serious crisis in its modern history, the leadership of the country has passed into the hands of a man who has spent decades operating in the shadows of power. For many observers around the world, the rise of Mojtaba Khamenei raises serious questions about what happens next. Will Iran become more aggressive? Will the war expand even further across the Middle East? The killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei marked one of the most dramatic developments in the decades-long conflict between Iran and its adversaries. For more than 3 decades, Ali Khamenei served as the most powerful figure in Iran. As supreme leader, he held ultimate authority over the country's political system, military, judiciary, and foreign policy. His power was greater than that of the president or parliament, making him the central decision-maker in nearly every major national issue. When he was killed in an airstrike targeting the supreme leader's offices in Tehran, the event immediately triggered a wave of shock and uncertainty across Iran. The strike was part of a broader military campaign carried out by Israel with support from the United States. The attacks targeted Iranian military infrastructure, missile facilities, and key government sites in an attempt to weaken Iran's strategic capabilities. The assassination of the supreme leader instantly created a dangerous power vacuum. Iran's political system is structured in such a way that the supreme leader is the final authority in all matters of state. Without that leadership, the country faced a critical question: who would take control during one of the most dangerous wars in the region's history? The responsibility for choosing a new leader fell to the Assembly of Experts, an influential body made up of 88 senior clerics. This assembly is tasked with selecting and supervising the supreme leader. In moments of national crisis, their decision becomes one of the most consequential political acts in the entire country. According to Iranian officials, the Assembly of Experts did not hesitate long before reaching their decision. Despite ongoing airstrikes, political chaos, mounting military pressure, the clerics gathered and agreed on a successor. Their choice was Mojtaba Khamenei. For years, Mojtaba had been widely rumored as a potential successor to his father. Although he never held a formal elected position within the Iranian government, he had quietly become one of the most influential figures inside the Islamic Republic's inner circle. Many analysts described him as a powerful gatekeeper who controlled access to his father and played a major role in managing political relationships within the regime. Born in 1969, Mojtaba Khamenei grew up during the early years of the Islamic Republic. His father had risen to power following the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which overthrew the monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and established a new Islamic government led by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. After Khomeini's death in 1989, Ali Khamenei became the second supreme leader of Iran. Over the following decades, he consolidated power and strengthened the role of Iran's religious leadership in governing the country. Throughout that period, Mojtaba remained close to the center of authority, gradually building influence within the political and religious establishment. He studied in the religious seminaries of Qom, one of the most important centers of Shia Islamic scholarship in the world. There, he trained under conservative clerics and obtained the clerical rank of Hojjatul Islam, a mid-level religious title. Despite his religious education, Mojtaba remained a mysterious figure to the general public. He rarely appeared in media interviews, seldom made public speeches, and avoided the kind of political visibility typically associated with national leaders. Yet behind the scenes, he was believed to have developed strong relationships with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, commonly known as the IRGC. The IRGC is one of the most powerful institutions in Iran, created after the 1979 revolution to protect the Islamic system. The organization has grown into a massive military and political force that operates its own army, navy, intelligence networks, and economic enterprises. In many ways, the Revolutionary Guard functions as a parallel power structure within Iran, answering directly to the supreme leader. Over time, Mojtaba reportedly cultivated deep ties with senior IRGC commanders. These relationships significantly increased his influence inside the regime and strengthened his position as a potential successor to his father. Some analysts believe Mojtaba played an important role in supporting hardline political factions within Iran. Reports have suggested that he backed former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad during the controversial elections that brought Ahmadinejad to power. Ahmadinejad's presidency was marked by confrontational rhetoric toward the West, aggressive nuclear development policies, and growing tensions with Israel and the United States. His leadership helped push Iran into one of the most intense periods of international sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Because of these associations, many experts now believe Mojtaba may represent a continuation or even an intensification of Iran's hardline approach to global politics. The timing of his rise to power could not be more critical. Iran is currently in the middle of an expanding war that involves multiple regional actors. Israeli airstrikes continue to target Iranian military infrastructure. Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks across the region, striking targets linked to Israel and its allies, according to Iranian officials. The country's military still possesses large stockpiles of missiles and drones capable of sustaining operations for months. The Revolutionary Guard has claimed that it has only used its first and second-generation missile systems so far, suggesting that more advanced weapons could be deployed in the coming stages of the conflict. At the same time, Israeli leaders have made clear that they view Iran's leadership itself as a legitimate target. Israeli military officials have openly warned that any successor to Ali Khamenei could also be targeted if they continue Iran's military operations. This threat places Mojtaba Khamenei in an extremely dangerous position from the moment he takes power. Unlike his father, who ruled for nearly 4 decades, Mojtaba begins his leadership under the immediate threat of assassination. The United States has also taken a confrontational stance toward Iran's new leader. Former President Donald Trump has publicly stated that Mojtaba Khamenei would be an unacceptable choice to lead Iran. He warned that any new Iranian leader would struggle to survive politically without the approval of the United States. These comments were quickly rejected by Iranian officials, who insisted that the leadership of their country would never be determined by foreign governments. Iranian politicians accused Washington of attempting to interfere in their internal affairs and emphasized that only the Iranian people have the right to decide their future. Inside Iran, the response among government institutions has been swift. The Revolutionary Guard Corps quickly pledged its loyalty to Mojtaba Khamenei. Senior military commanders declared that they would follow his leadership as the new supreme leader and continue defending the Islamic Republic against external threats. Political leaders also rallied behind the decision. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf described obedience to the new supreme leader as both a national and religious duty. Meanwhile, senior national security officials urged the public to unite around the leadership in order to resist what they described as foreign aggression. For Iran's ruling establishment, the selection of Mojtaba Khamenei appears to represent a message of defiance, rather than weakening the regime. The assassination of Ali Khamenei may have strengthened the determination of hardline factions within the government. Analysts believe the choice sends a clear signal to Iran's enemies. By appointing the son of the assassinated leader, the clerical establishment is demonstrating that the system of the Islamic Republic remains intact. In their view, the leadership transition ensures continuity of the revolutionary ideology that has guided Iran for more than 4 decades. However, the decision is also controversial. Critics have long warned that allowing Mojtaba to succeed his father could resemble the creation of a hereditary political dynasty. Iran's Islamic Revolution originally promised to end monarchy and hereditary rule. Yet the transfer of power from father to son has led some observers to argue that the system is beginning to resemble the royal structures it once opposed. Within Iran itself, public opinion on Mojtaba Khamenei remains difficult to measure. The country's media environment is tightly controlled, and open criticism of the supreme leader can carry serious consequences. As a result, it is unclear how ordinary citizens truly feel about the leadership change. What is certain is that Mojtaba Khamenei inherits a nation under immense pressure. The economy is struggling under years of sanctions. Military conflict threatens to expand across the region, and political tensions remain high both inside and outside the country. The decisions he makes in the coming days and weeks could determine not only the future of Iran, but also the stability of the entire Middle East. Some experts believe the first public appearance of the new supreme leader will be one of the most important moments in recent Iranian history. When Mojtaba Khamenei steps forward to address the nation, the world will be watching carefully. Will he promise revenge for the death of his father? Will he escalate the conflict with Israel and the United States? Or will he signal a willingness to pursue negotiations? At this moment, the answer to those questions remains uncertain. But one thing is clear. The rise of Mojtaba Khamenei marks the beginning of a new and unpredictable chapter in the story of the Islamic Republic. The rise of Mojtaba Khamenei to the position of supreme leader comes at a time when the entire Middle East is already facing extraordinary instability. The conflict that erupted following the assassination of his father has rapidly expanded beyond a single confrontation between Iran and Israel. Instead, it has evolved into a broader regional crisis involving multiple countries, military alliances, and competing geopolitical interests. Every decision made by Iran's new leader could now influence the future of millions of people across the region. In Tehran, the atmosphere following the leadership transition has been tense and uncertain. Thick smoke hung over parts of the capital after a series of Israeli airstrikes struck several oil, storage facilities, and energy sites in and around the city. Fires burned through the night. An emergency crews struggled to contain the damage as plumes of dark smoke filled the sky above Iran's largest metropolis. These attacks were part of an escalating campaign targeting Iran's economic and military infrastructure. Oil facilities are among the most strategic targets in the country because they represent the backbone of Iran's economy. Any disruption to the country's oil industry has the potential to weaken its financial stability and limit its ability to sustain prolonged military operations. Despite these strikes, Iranian military leaders insist that the country remains fully capable of continuing its fight. Officials from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have publicly stated that Iran possesses enough military resources to sustain missile and drone operations for at least 6 months. According to statements from IRGC spokespersons, the weapons used so far in the conflict represent only a fraction of Iran's available arsenal. Military analysts believe Iran possesses thousands of missiles of varying ranges and capabilities. Some are designed for short-range tactical strikes, while others are capable of traveling hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. In addition to ballistic missiles, Iran has developed a vast drone program, producing unmanned aerial vehicles that can be used for surveillance, reconnaissance, and direct attack missions. These weapons have already played a central role in the conflict. Iranian drones and missiles have reportedly struck targets across the region, including military sites and infrastructure linked to Israel and its allies. Some strikes have even reached cities in the Gulf region, raising concerns that the war could spread far beyond the original battlefield. The expanding scope of the conflict has forced many civilians and foreign nationals to flee the region. Wealthy individuals, business executives, and international workers have reportedly begun evacuating through emergency routes, often paying enormous sums of money to secure private transportation out of the Middle East. Private security companies have organized convoys of armored vehicles to transport passengers from cities like Dubai to safer departure points in neighboring countries. From there, chartered private jets carry evacuees to Europe or other parts of the world. In some cases, the cost of a single emergency flight has reportedly reached hundreds of thousands of dollars. Airports across parts of the region have been forced to close due to the threat of missile attacks. With commercial air travel severely restricted, alternative evacuation routes have become extremely limited. Some countries have temporarily relaxed visa regulations to allow travelers to enter quickly and depart through safer air corridors. Meanwhile, cities that once thrived on tourism and international business have suddenly become quiet and tense. In places like Dubai, which is normally known for its crowded shopping malls, luxury hotels, and vibrant nightlife, the atmosphere has shifted dramatically. Streets that were once filled with traffic and tourists have become unusually silent as residents stay indoors and businesses suspend operations. Schools in several areas have moved to online learning as a precaution against potential attacks. Families have begun stockpiling food and supplies while supermarkets experience sudden surges in demand. Delivery services have struggled to keep up with the rush as many people attempt to prepare for the possibility of prolonged instability. For parents, the psychological impact of the crisis has been especially difficult. Reports have emerged of families attempting to shield their children from fear by downplaying the sounds of explosions and military activity. Some parents have told their children that the loud noises they hear are fireworks or ceremonial cannons rather than missiles or drones. Amid this atmosphere of anxiety and uncertainty, the leadership of Iran has undergone one of the most significant transitions in its history. Mojtaba Khamenei now finds himself responsible for guiding the country through a moment that could define the future of the Islamic Republic. Unlike many political leaders around the world, the supreme leader of Iran holds an extraordinary concentration of power. The position is not simply symbolic or ceremonial. Instead, it represents the highest authority within the entire political system. The supreme leader serves as the commander-in-chief of Iran's armed forces. He has the authority to appoint or dismiss senior military commanders, control the country's intelligence services, and oversee national security strategy. He also has the final say in key foreign policy decisions, including war and peace. In addition to military authority, the supreme leader exerts influence over Iran's judicial system, state media, and major economic institutions. The office can intervene in political disputes, approve or reject candidates for public office, and shape the ideological direction of the government. Because of this immense power, the identity and worldview of the supreme leader can dramatically influence the country's trajectory. For Mojtaba Khamenei, stepping into this role means inheriting a legacy that spans decades of political transformation. His father ruled Iran for 37 years, making him one of the longest-serving leaders in the modern Middle East. During that time, Ali Khamenei oversaw periods of both intense confrontation and cautious diplomacy with the outside world. He supported Iran's expansion of regional influence through alliances with armed groups and political movements across the Middle East. At the same time, he occasionally permitted negotiations with Western governments when doing so served the strategic interests of the country. One of the most controversial issues during his leadership was Iran's nuclear program. Iranian officials have long insisted that the program is intended for peaceful purposes, such as energy production and scientific research. However, many Western governments and intelligence agencies believe Iran has pursued the capability to build nuclear weapons. This suspicion led to years of international sanctions, diplomatic disputes, and covert operations targeting Iranian nuclear facilities. Now, with Mojtaba Khamenei assuming power, the future direction of the nuclear program has become an even more pressing question. Some analysts believe the new supreme leader may be more willing than his father to pursue nuclear weapons capability if he believes it is necessary to protect Iran from foreign threats. Others argue that the ongoing war could actually push Iran toward accelerating its nuclear ambitions. If the country feels that its survival is at stake, leaders may see nuclear deterrence as the only reliable guarantee against further attacks. However, such a move would likely provoke an even more intense international response. Israel has repeatedly declared that it will never allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons. The United States has also warned that all options remain on the table to prevent that outcome. For this reason, Mojtaba Khamenei's stance on nuclear policy may become one of the most closely watched aspects of his leadership. Beyond military strategy and nuclear policy, the new supreme leader must also navigate complex internal dynamics within Iran's political system. The Islamic Republic is not a monolithic government. Instead, it contains multiple factions with different priorities, ideologies, and visions for the future. Hardline conservatives emphasize resistance against Western influence and prioritize maintaining the revolutionary principles established in 1979. Reformist politicians, although significantly weakened in recent years, often advocate for greater engagement with the international community and more social freedoms at home. Balancing these competing forces will be a major challenge for Mojtaba Khamenei. If he leans too heavily toward hardline policies, he risks deepening Iran's isolation and intensifying domestic dissatisfaction. But if he attempts to introduce reforms, he may face resistance from powerful conservative institutions that dominate the political landscape. The support of the Revolutionary Guard will likely play a decisive role in determining the stability of his leadership. The IRGC controls significant military resources and economic networks throughout the country. Its commanders have already pledged loyalty to the new supreme leader, but maintaining that alliance will require careful political management. Another factor shaping Mojtaba's leadership will be the symbolic power of his father's death. Within Iran's political narrative, the killing of Ali Khamenei has been framed as a martyrdom carried out by foreign enemies. This narrative reinforces the idea that Iran is under attack and must remain united against external aggression. For hardline factions, this framing strengthens the argument for a more confrontational approach to global politics. They believe that compromise with Western powers would only invite further attacks rather than bring peace. At the same time, some analysts suggest that prolonged war could eventually create pressure for diplomatic solutions. The conflict continues to damage Iran's economy and infrastructure. Political leaders may face growing demands from the population to seek a negotiated end to hostilities. International reactions to Mojtaba Khamenei's appointment have been cautious but closely watched. Governments across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are attempting to assess what his leadership might mean for regional stability. Some diplomats believe the leadership transition could create an opportunity for new negotiations if the new leader wishes to establish his own political legacy. Others fear the opposite scenarios, that Mojtaba may adopt an even more aggressive posture in order to demonstrate strength during the early stages of his rule. Inside Iran, state media has portrayed the leadership transition as a moment of resilience and continuity. Official broadcasts emphasize that the system of the Islamic Republic remains intact despite the assassination of its longtime leader. Images of large gatherings and ceremonies honoring Ali Khamenei have been shown repeatedly on national television. In these broadcasts, speakers praise his decades of leadership and call on citizens to rally behind his successor. For many Iranians, however, daily life has become increasingly difficult due to economic pressures and the uncertainty created by the ongoing conflict. Sanctions, inflation, and political tensions have already placed heavy burdens on the population over the past several years. Now, with war expanding across the region, the future feels even more uncertain. Mojtaba Khamenei's leadership will ultimately be judged not only by his response to foreign threats, but also by his ability to address these domestic challenges. The stability of the Islamic Republic depends on maintaining both political control and public support. As the world watches the unfolding situation, one question continues to dominate discussions among analysts and policymakers. What kind of leader will Mojtaba Khamenei become? Will he follow the exact path of his father, maintaining the same ideological framework and geopolitical strategies? Will he prove to be even more uncompromising toward Iran's adversaries? Or could he surprise the world by pursuing a different approach entirely? The answers to those questions will emerge over time, shaped by events both inside Iran and across the broader Middle East. But one thing is already clear. The appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei marks the beginning of a new era for Iran. An era defined by uncertainty, confrontation, and the possibility of dramatic change. And as the war continues to unfold, the decisions made by Iran's new supreme leader may determine whether the region moves toward greater conflict or finds a path back from the brink.